Please welcome Mario Rodriguez.
Hello, and welcome to GitHub Universe. How was kind of day number one for you and that keynote? For me, it was kind of top 5. It's the first time that you could see that complete AI-powered developer platform. My team had been working very hard for the last 6 months, and it was just incredible. And then day 2, you just kind of saw again, that AI-powered platform, and we walked you through many of the items in there. What I want to do today is really kind of do a deep dive on it. So top of the stack then, Mario Rodriguez. I'm VP of Product at GitHub, and I oversee our productivity tools. That includes repos, pull requests, issues, projects, and I also have the privilege to work with an amazing team that is doing GitHub Copilot. So with that, let's get started. So I meet with a lot of customers. In a lot of those conversations, what I would say is I could narrow it down to 3 things that you want to achieve. And that is, you're telling us, you know what, Mario, we need to continue to innovate. We need to differentiate the products that we have. You also told us that you have to find efficiencies. In today's market, that is like super important, and you all know that. And the third thing is, you're doing everything so you can grow with your customers. So this is what we listen to every day. Okay, you want to innovate, you want to kind of grow and have more productivity within your enterprise. You want to go and find efficiencies with those productivities, and then you want to continue to grow your company. And for that, kind of the answer that we have for you is these 3 pillars. Number 1 is GitHub's foundation is developer experience. That's what we're known for. We kind of, if you cut us up, and we're going to have 2 things in our blood, open source, and the other thing is going to be that DevX and that developer experience. And what we want to do with that developer experience is give you a unified platform on it. The second thing is, okay, we could give you this, but if it's not secure, it doesn't really matter. No one likes to get hacked. So let's make sure that whatever we're doing, we're maximizing for that security. And we want to kind of shift left as much as possible on that. And then number 3 is we want to really keep you in the flow. And when I say keep you in the flow, I actually mean everyone. I mean the developer, I mean the product manager, I mean the tester, and I mean the stakeholders that also interact with those teams. Many of the teams today also interact with marketing, legal, and many other ones. So we're just not thinking about the developer in that end-to-end flow. We want to think about all of the personas. And you probably heard a little bit of that from Inbal and the team as well. So I want to kind of go back a little bit because I joined GitHub in 2018. And when I joined GitHub, I joined it for this specific reason that I'm going to tell you right now. And that is, in 2018, GitHub was known for being the home of open source and having the best version control system or source control system in the world at scale. And what we said is, you know what, that is good, but what we hear from customers is that they want a platform and they want a partner that they could take a bet on that takes them from idea to production. And that's what I came to GitHub to do. I wanted to grow that GitHub platform to do that. So in 2019, what did we do? We introduced Actions, which became our CI/CD. We also bought 2 companies. For you, those of you who remember, we bought Dependabot and we bought Semel. And by those 2 acquisitions, we formed GitHub Advanced Security. And Ash will show you a lot of what that, of all of the advancements that have come since then. We then, introduced packages. We did a collaboration with Microsoft on Codespaces. And then in 2021, we started the road of AI with Copilot. And that has been kind of like 2023, and what we just showed you yesterday is a combination of that. It's a lot of hard work to build that end-to-end platform, but we do have it now, and it's ready for you. I love this slide, by the way, not only because our designers rock and it's beautiful, but also it kind of tells you everything that goes into it. There's a lot that goes into actually providing this end-to-end platform for you. You start with collaboration and everything with projects and issues. You go into productivity with all the tools that we have, and then continue through security. And then, of course, everything at the top is powered by AI. Take a picture of it. You could post it on Twitter, anything you want, or on X, I guess. So now let's actually think about, from idea to production, what is it that we want to do? I think for me, maybe this is the best way of actually explaining it. Almost all successful companies that I have actually been with or worked with improve their iteration velocity. So what do I mean by improving your iteration velocity? Maybe you want to do this. You're not going to be a very popular person in your enterprise or your company if you do this. But actually ask your team, if a security vulnerability happens on Saturday at 10 p.m., how quickly can we go from being able to react to that to being in production and fixing it? It's a very, very good question to ask. Many companies at times don't even know how long it takes them in that iteration specifically. You could then up-level it a little bit, so it's not on a Saturday, but let's say you have a bug fix, how quickly does it take you? You could up-level a little bit more. Let's say you have a feature, how long does it take you? You could up-level a little bit more. How long, if you have an initiative, how long does it take you? Up-level a little bit more. If you're actually betting your company on something, how long does it take you to actually realize that bet? That is what I call iteration velocity at the end. And the people that do it really well, the many of you that do it really well, try to compress that. You probably know about working capital. If you want to think about iteration capital the same way, that's the way to think about it. You want to be constantly improving it. You want to be shortening that time overall. So, we see this as one of the factors that actually drives innovation and efficiencies. So if you really want to realize what we talked at the beginning, which is how can I find efficiencies, how can I continue to drive innovation and growth, yes, center it on productivity, because that is the heart of it, but you also have to think about the entirety, from idea to production, and then figuring out how to actually get those things to be shorter in time and increasing your iteration velocity. That's the best advice I could give you all on that. That's what we do at GitHub. That's what we strive to actually provide to you in that platform. OK, so with that, what I want to do now is do a little bit of a deep dive. And that deep dive would actually be in code. And what we're going to do is we have this beautiful eShop where, actually, if you have been the building next door, you probably saw it. A lot of the things out there are flying off the shelf. And what we want to do is just say, we have a quick fix to it. There's a problem in production. How quickly can we deploy something to fix that? I just want to walk you through that. And then we'll pick a couple of other scenarios. Let's switch to demo. So this is our eShop. You could buy anything in there. So now let's go to the next screen. And what I have over here is projects. And we launched this we kind of redesigned it in 2021, and we have been improving it ever since. So if you've been at the last universe, you probably saw a demo of it. And we play a little bit on last universe with Octorcade at Invaders. And here's the project. You can see what it took to get to alpha and to beta. One of my favorite features is roadmap. And in the roadmap, you could see a kind of a timeline of what ended up happening on that project. Let's go back really quick. And let's go now to that eShop. And then in this eShop, I see one issue over here, which is a performance issue with the inventory management. So you can click on it. And again, this is just like my fast lane that I have for this project. And let's click on it really quick. And it seems like we're tracking a little bit of the inventory. We're writing too much to it. We're reading too much on it. So we want to play with a cache or something to be able to minimize the load on the database. And that's what I want to do then at this moment. So with that, let's go. And let me do an improv before we go into it. And I know Amy, if Amy is in over here, don't worry about it. Don't have a heart attack. She keeps me through on things. And we're going to do this live, OK? So please bear with me if it doesn't end up working overall. I have Copilot over here. And I'm in that stand-up, and people are saying something about caches and all of that. And Copilot could be, it could help me a little bit with it, too. So I could just go and say, hey, I want a general coding chat question. And I'm going to tell me a software joke about caches. See what it does. This is real life, OK? It told me one. It's not about caches. It's about mainly, this is base 8. This is base 10. Why is that a joke? Okay, doesn't matter. But okay, so we could actually do a new conversation overall. And another thing that I could do is learn a little bit more about my company. So in this case, I may ask it, and remember, always say please. That's probably why it did that to me on the other one. Actually, let me start with a different thing, see if it does this. Yeah, there you go. It even replies in Spanish on it. So let's do this again and say, tell me a story, whoops, about Mona. There you go. And it tells me a story about what Mona is. And this is great. And the reason why I'm showing you this at the end is this is the power of documentation on GitHub. So if I actually want to learn more about that eShop, and there's a lot of documents already in GitHub, then I could do that. I could just ask it, tell me about the eShop, tell me about the culture of the company, and then Copilot could be there with me. I could ask it about a joke, and then sometimes it does well, and sometimes it does not. But it's there with you, it's personalized to you overall. So with that, maybe now let's go with a little bit. So this open source project over here is Radius, and they just launched. For those of the Radius team listening, shout out to you all. And what they're trying to do is kind of give you an ability to represent infrastructure with files, and then be able to then affect that infrastructure change very seamlessly. So what I want to do now, and this is going to be a little bit more scripted, so we could go through it very quickly. Here's, again, that issue. And what I want to walk you very quickly is, how can I get something to production with Redis with Copilot? So I go over here. I have my Copilot assistant. I'm going to type into it, open this in the GitHub eShop workspace. I'm going to press Enter. And what Copilot is doing is bringing context into that workspace. And it's telling me a little bit about the application overall. So, and then what I could ask it after that is, tell me about the latest deployments of this application. You can see that it's telling me about the backend, the warehouse, and then I'm going to click on that, and then it's going to tell me a little bit about, OK, the latest deployment of this application happened, it was 6 times recently, and Adrian Mata was the last one to deploy it. So if I have a question about who to ask about something that happened in production recently, then I know to ask Adrian. I could go in and say, where are we reading inventory count very easily, just to get an understanding of how this is set up. And then it tells me, well, I have 3 different calls overall. And in those 3 different calls, in these 3 different files, I could find it. I could click on one of them, and I get this very immersive experience on the right-hand side that tells me what that file is. So I know if I want to kind of update the inventory count, I could do it in 3 places. Then I'm going to ask it, OK, I want to deploy a Redis cache to it. And it's going to find, for those of you that have platform engineering teams, you could define this type of knowledge overall, and then Copilot can use it in the response back to that developer. And it's saying, you have 2 flavors of Redis that you could deploy. And then I'm going to ask it, well, let's use Redis Enterprise. And it's telling me, OK, I just created a PR for you. And then with the Redis metadata, then we could create then that PR and affect the graph that you see over here. Let me do maybe this. Oops. Why is it not working for us right now? That's OK. And you could affect the graph overall on it and be able to kind of see it. And we're going to maybe do an hour on that. But that's the way to do it. It's you go in, you tell it, what is the application? Let me learn more about that application. Let me then deploy something. It uses some metadata on it. It creates a PR for you, and you just deploy it. And that was within 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, depending how much you want to end up interacting with the system. So the other stuff that I want to do now, and we could actually go back into the deck. Oops. So what you saw over there, and just want to summarize it for you, is docs are tailored for you. So you end up telling Copilot what are the docs that you want indexed. We create embeddings for those index, and then you could ask questions and get results back. You have actual documentation that gets used daily. You have a feedback loop to get that to your developers. The second thing that you saw was Copilot Chat, and you could be whimsical with it, or you could end up doing a deployment to production with it overall as well. And now, let's go then to the next stage, which is the coding stage. And then for this, what I want to do is I just want to go and open a code space. And once I open that code space, I want to make some changes to it. And then I want to deploy it. And then what I want to show you is everything else that the platform does for you on that as well. So over here, I have this popular repos web app. I have a code space right here that you could just open with it. For the purpose of this application, I already have it open, so we don't have to end up wasting time with it. And then what I'm going to do right now is do an npm star. Oops. And once that opens, then you're going to be able to see what it looks like. And it's just for the report. So if you know about Codespaces, there are cloud development environments. Everything is installed within that cloud development environment within seconds. I could be up and running. I could be actually interacting with that application. This is what the application looks like right now. It has JavaScript, Java, C#. And what I want to do then instead is I want to make a change because if you have seen the Octoverse report before, this is the order: JavaScript, Python, TypeScript, and Java. And right now, we don't have that order in that application. So maybe let's do that quick change. But before I do that, what I want to do is maybe have the Copilot explain to me what this actually does, what the repo grid does. And I'm going to be asking that question. And you can see here, Copilot responding back to me and telling me what that repo grid is. It's a function without argument. It takes a set of prompts, and then it ends up rendering that in a popular list. I'm like, perfect. That is great. So then what I want to do, if I just go back into this snippet, and I go back into that application, and just do this, and save it. And then if we go back into it, and maybe refresh. Then there you go. So I have then my application, and now everything is sorted. So that was really quick. So I understand the code. I do a quick change, code space, refresh. Now let's go back and commit this change really quick. So I am going to say the order is now right. And then I'm just going to commit it, yes. Sync the changes, yes. And then this is going to create a PR for me. OK, demos today are not on my favorite to it. But believe me that it actually ends up creating a PR for me on that end. And then we could actually see one of them that I already did in here. And over here, I have updated home. And you can see the files change on it, and I had done a set of changes to it. What I wanted to show you next is the following. Once I create this, what it's going to do is run a series of checks. And you can see that it ran this lint. So where did it get that lint from? So I could go to my settings, and I could go to rules, and I could go to rule sets. Then I see this lint rule. And we have this capability of now to be able to govern things at scale for you. So you define a set of rules within a rule set, and then that gets applied everywhere. As you can see, this is an organizational rule set, so I inherited it overall from what the admins have set up. So that could be something that has to do with security as well. And if I go to actions, then I could end up going over here and seeing everything every time that actual rule, or in this case, is CI, that ends up running with it, gets run. So now you have rule sets, you have rules, you have CI, and you have an ability to actually integrate that as well with pull requests at scale. So the next thing that I wanted to do as well, and since that push did not work, I want to maybe walk you through what that would look like overall then with this. But before I do that, maybe let me show you then a rule set that is a little bit more complicated than just a simple universe, the simple one that I show you in lint. And in this one over here, you can see that I'm targeting a set of repositories. There's a bypass list of administrators that could actually do that. And in these repositories, I have 142 that is applying. I have my target branches as well that I could actually set. I have branch protections that I could set in each one of those, things like restrict deletions of the repository and the branches, create a pull request before merging, and then also require workflows before merging as well. And this is what you saw over here with that CI on it. And then, of course, in the metadata restrictions, I could even say, hey, commit message must not start with something as well if you want to keep things very clean. So, you could do it very simple, just a lint rule. You could do a very simple, workflow that needs to run as part of your CI, or you could do something very complicated as well with rule sets and repo metadata. And with that, maybe let's go back into the presentation and just walk you through those things again. So what you saw in there is I opened a code space. From that code space, I could interact with Copilot right there. I could make a change. I could see it live within that code space. I could commit it up into a PR. I could then use Copilot in that PR as well to summarize the changes as you saw yesterday. And then from there, I could then interact with my rules, my CI, and then make sure that everything has governance at scale set with it. So we have pull requests that tell a story. We have rule sets at scale. We have merge queue. Merge queue is also a system that we have where if you have many people contending on a branch, now you could queue those changes, and before what we would take you 20 minutes might take you now 1 minute because we're able to actually run parallel CIs, and we're able to tell what code is interacting and doesn't have any conflicts and automatically merging it. And then the last thing in here that I want to show you as well is deployments. So I show you a little bit of that CI that is running with the lint rules as well. And the next thing is what does a complicated deployment actually look like? So with that, let's do it last. So if I go here to my actions, and actually this pull request that I had run over here, you can see something where I ended up deploying my app. That app ended up going over here, and there were 3 jobs. I'm deploying to my tests on Chrome, on Edge, and Mozilla, so I'm running a set of tests on the pull request. And then I did something, which is I had set it up to deploy into my to what we call review lab usually. And over here, you can see that my review lab ended up finishing, but it didn't deploy to production yet. So then the next thing that I wanted to do after I end up interacting with that and testing it is then deploy to production. So in this case, I have set up everything. I deploy PR. I check it in review lab, and then I merge it. And then once I merge it, then what you're going to be able to see here is, here we go. Sorry. And here is, after I go ahead and merge it, then I have the same workflow where I have my 3 jobs. Now it no longer goes to my review lab. Now it goes into my deploy into production. And it has 2 gates. It goes in and checks, actually, what has happened with a set of needles that I have set up. And then after that stage and passes all of the needles, then I go into my production environment as well. So this is a very complicated workflow overall, but now you see kind of the power of that platform on it. So you could go from PR into review lab. I check my review lab. You could go then from there into production. I have even more deployment gates that I have set up with it. And at the end, I have my application in prod. All right. So with that, this is more or less what that platform gives you. You saw projects. You saw issues. You saw Codespaces. You saw the power of Copilot on it. You saw the ability to employ large hosted runners, rule sets, and merge queue. And then finally, I just show you very quickly what deployments and deployment gates actually give you. So you could go from idea to production, quick but safe. And with that, what I want to kind of end with is where we started. And where we started was on that iteration velocity. It's the ability to go in and have an idea that you have, and then take that quickly, kind of shorten the time frame for you to go to production on that idea. And we do that with the power of AI as well, and we're going to keep iterating and iterating on it. Now, we all know that iteration velocity is not everything. We have customers, and kind of like the soul of GitHub is also those customers. And what I want to do now is I want to invite Naresh Choudhary into the stage for us to spend some time and hearing from him. Naresh, join us.
Mario,
Thank you so much. Sorry, I had to take a break. Welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe let's start a little bit about you and your role at Infosys, and just tell us about it, and then we could go kind of get into deeper into the questions.
Sure. So my name is Naresh. I head engineering excellence and enterprise productivity at Infosys. I'm based out of Bangalore in India. And a lot of the developer tooling is what I have done for the past decade or so at the company. And I love this because I get to interact with developers. And like all of you, I was a developer back in the day. So just love being here. Thank you so much for having me here.
And so, yeah, well, welcome. Walk us a little bit about how you use GitHub at Infosys.
Sure. So the journey sort of goes back a little in time. We were on open source Git, and that's when we had to make a decision to sort of move to something that will scale, and that's how we actually started the adoption of GitHub in the company. Started with the server on-prem, and then gradually moved to the cloud, SaaS, and then over a period of time, we have been adding capabilities, and sort of got in advanced security, and recent times, we sort of got in GitHub Copilot. And the experience with GitHub Copilot has been fantastic. We sort of, over the past 6 months, scaled it to about 6,500 users. And in fact, glad to share with you, Mario and team, we hit the first milestone of 1 million lines of code accepted through GitHub Copilot.
Wow.
By all these developers. And the feedback from the developers is fantastic. They love it. They love the kind of ease with which they can interact with Copilot, get what they're looking for, and the acceptance rates have been sort of growing constantly.
That's great to see. Maybe share with the audience a little bit more about collaboration, how you think about collaboration at Infosys, and how do you even measure some of this productivity, and what are the metrics that you end up using? That's something that I get asked a lot.
Sure. So the use of GitHub at Infosys sort of goes beyond just being a code repo. So 2 or 3 highlights that I would like to share with all of you. One, it sort of serves as a backend for what we have as a code store. So code store is my internal inner sourcing reuse repository. Has about 50,000 odd assets, code components, bots, scripts, tests, all kinds of things that you can imagine developers use as Lego blocks to sort of plug things together, create something bigger, better. So that is one. Second, it also is an orchestrator for me to sort of orchestrate the entire DevSecOps value chain across the software engineering set. And that is very critical for me because when we were setting up our DevSecOps ecosystem, we were looking for something that can actually play that role. And GitHub really fit in very snugly into that position. And today, sort of, it plays a very foundational role as part of our shared digital infrastructure, which is our promise to every developer in the company that they get to use and leverage the best-in-class tools comparable with anywhere else in the world. So that's a promise that I believe GitHub and the entire shared digital infra has lived up to over the years. Now, these two are critical because this then allows me to start using this to sort of light up metrics, analytics that we in the company call as live engineering. So this is an analytics layer which is sitting on top of the shared digital infra. Depending on different personas, you are essentially looking at different metrics that matter to you. You're also looking at intelligent insights coming to you to make your decisions faster. So for instance, as a product manager or a product owner, I am worried about my release confidence. So right before you actually make the release dates, I have the ability to tell you that your release confidence is only 60% or 70%. You then have the ability to actually go back, course correct, you can take certain actions and so on. And these metrics actually change by different personas. What we notice is significant acceleration in the velocity that we are able to actually do from idea to the time to market.
Okay, that's good. So let's go deeper maybe on that life engineer, those metrics, and maybe describe it a little bit more because again, like that is one area if you think about iteration velocity and if you think about confidence and if you think about the usage of the platform, that's an area that, it's super critical for customers to get right to really take advantage of the entirety of what GitHub is today. So maybe go into detail on maybe the planning side at once, or maybe on the CD side and the deployment side as well.
Sure. So what we have done is use the foundational base metrics, and then on top of that, we have sort of created, for instance, DevSecOps. So we have created a DevSecOps maturity model and a DevSecOps maturity score. And the idea here is not really to look at metrics in a narrow manner, but to aggregate them to a point where you are able to actually compare teams. And the teams can actually then, for instance, look at DevSecOps maturity or their engineering maturity or the product value maturity that they are actually able to deliver. Now, these are an aggregation of different things that actually happen at various levels. So there are things that an individual can see for themselves. As a developer, for instance, I can see my code churn, I can see the security-related stuff that I am actually doing every sprint or every release. I can see a lot of that metrics, but that is restricted to me, which means only I can see my metrics. It's not visible to my neighbor, it's not visible to somebody else in the team, it's not visible to my manager in the team as well, right? So these are for self-improvement. These metrics are actually used to nudge, help the developer to do better. For instance, if I'm working on a certain stack and I'm actually shifting from one tech stack to another, I may need support, I may need help. Now, back in the day, we would actually push a whole bunch of trainings, etc., to the developer. But today, it is highly personalized based on this data. The developer actually gets nudges based on the kinds of stuff that they are seeing in their build process, the failures that are happening, the defects that are coming in, and so on, right? But this is completely restricted in the box only to the developer. There are team-level matrices, which are these maturity scores and things like that, which are actually visible more broadly. They are more transparent. And they are then used to actually more look at trends. The absolutes really don't matter. How are you trending, right? Are you improving release after release is what is sort of, then looked at. So that's how we drive it. And then the metrics are more or less common, I think, which all of you perhaps are familiar with. DORA, for example, are all built in there. A lot of the space-related capabilities in terms of the framework and the metrics are actually built in there. So the standard metrics, I think the typical ones that you would think of. Yeah.
So one of the things that we saw yesterday, actually from Satya, which I love, was click, click, tap, tap, and you could get an application kind of created within seconds. So tell me a little bit more about your experience. Maybe you do a little bit of click, click, tap, tap to a Copilot, and tell me a little bit about your experience with Copilot and your team's experience with Copilot as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So if I were to break up the million lines of code that is now sitting in my repository, it is not written by human, it's all generated by Copilot. So there is about 250,000 lines of code, which is TypeScript, JavaScript. There is a 250,000 about which is Java. Then there is Go, there is C#, and then there is a long tail of a few others. On every single one of those stacks, in fact, we have tried to break Copilot, which means we have tried to see, does it fail? Can I make it fail, right? Can I see security issues? Can I figure out any code quality related issues? And we haven't found one so far. But we'll keep looking. Yeah. So we have been trying, right? So that's how the pilot process actually went. We tried to sort of do all these experiments. The second thing that we noticed was, as part of the pilot, we actually gave it to 3 distinct set of people. So we have a lot of people who come straight out of college. So we gave it to them. We gave it to people with 1.5 to 2 years with the company who understand a project, who understand the context of the account, the domain that they are working on. And then we give it to people with 5+ years of experience who sort of know the design and the architecture really well. And we found that in each of these 3 segments, each of them had sort of improvements, right? But the highest improvements we saw were with people who had some experience of the tech and some experience of the domain that they were working on, right? So that's where I think the maximum bang for the buck. And I had to do this experiment because we wanted to test the hypothesis. Can you give Copilot to somebody who doesn't know anything? Right? And while they are a little more productive, but they aren't as much as we thought they would be. So those were things that we sort of validated. The third important thing, Mario, is we also found that a significant acceleration in the time, right? The time that it takes to actually develop a feature or fix a bug or test something. But we also found that the quality of the code that was generated was far better, and security, like I mentioned, right, we did not find anything that was sort of going out of the box in terms of our compliance, right? We look for certain things based on the kind of work that we do for customers. So those are the things that sort of we found so far.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, every time I talk to customers, they're always kind of thinking about, okay, when I deploy Copilot, how can I get the best out of that? And you know, I know you all kind of did it systematically, and you really were trying to understand how did it improve not only the beginner developers, but also your very experienced developers as well, and then trying to figure it out from there. What is the best way to get the best out of that tool through prompt engineering and enablement of your developers. So that's great to hear. So then let's go back to maybe yesterday. What was your favorite announcement of GitHub Universe and what Thomas and the team shared?
Yeah, there are a couple of them actually. I think one, I always looked at GitHub as these, different blocks of capabilities. I think what was very heartening to see yesterday and also today, right, as part of your own demo, I was watching backstage, right?
It did have a couple of fails, but it's okay. We'll get it.
It is actually coming together as a unified AI-powered platform for developers. That's something all of us in the developer tools world aspire to build. And I think we perhaps have something available today, right? So that was great. I think that was one of my favorite announcements. The second thing is, I think, the fact that you are taking AI beyond the coding part, right, beyond the coding world, into every facet of the software engineering value chain. I think that is fantastic. And the part that I was looking forward to, which I got to hear yesterday and today, was the fact that we can actually now train Copilot with our own data, fine-tuning the model. I think that's something that's going to be a game changer because we ourselves had been experimenting with what we call as narrow transformers, which is taking open source models, making them work with our own data sets and sort of trying to see if we can get similar kind of efficiencies. Now, with Copilot having that capability, we have more options and more things to sort of work with. So those are my favorite.
That's great to hear. When one of the things on the announcements yesterday, there are kind of two ways to personalize Copilot to your organization. One of them is through this concept where we call it retriever augmented generation, which we embed the contents of GitHub, and then you're able to then utilize chat and even code completion in the future to be able to get personalized answers. And the other one is what you said, fine-tuning. I get asked about fine-tuning the models all the time, especially if you have programming languages that you use that are not broadly available, or if you have a specific ways of coding in your organization. If you want to get that next improvement in those code acceptance, fine-tuning is a great tool for it. Absolutely. Maybe let's try to play magic ball overall. And what are your predictions on AI, let's say, for the next 5 years? Like, what do you think, where is AI going overall?
Okay, so I think you should have asked that question to Satya and Thomas yesterday. But yeah, the way I look at it, I think this is an irreversible change. I think all of us have to start to see how we embrace it. I know there was a time when we thought that this is academic, this is POC, this is something that will not come into the mainstream. But I think all of that is behind us, right? And it's very clear that it's here to stay. We have to look to embrace it. One, second, I think what within Infosys we call as being responsible by design. I think this is something all of us have to pay more and more attention to. How do we become responsible by design, whether it is security, whether it is data privacy, and now whether it is AI, right? So that's the other facet. So how do we bring in a lot more capabilities into the framework to be more responsible, right? So that's the other thing that I feel will happen more and more. And the third thing is the usage of AI will just become more and more pervasive. It will become part of our daily lives. We will not think of it as AI anymore, right? It will be part of the regular routine that we actually go through on a day-to-day basis. So, and coming home to the software engineering world, I think we will have to change the way we have looked at software engineering. I have always been developing stuff with the mindset of you are handwriting a lot of things, right? And the change now would be that, from take the aspect of construction or building a house. You are not building a house brick by brick, but you are sort of getting fabricated stuff, and you're just, so the time, the way to look at quality, the way to look at gluing, right, stuff, is where the attention would focus more and more on. I think that's something that we'll have to sort of figure it out and bring it into the mainstream on the software engineering side.
Yep. Let's bring it up then with one rapid fire question, and that is, what advice you have for the leaders of organizations and the people in this room?
Yeah, I think very simple, one line, stay hungry, and I would say stay foolish, but I would sort of change that a little bit to say stay curious, right? So stay hungry, stay curious, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you so much, Naresh.
Thank
you all.
Thank you. Thank you.